Welcome to Building the Future, hosted by Kevin Horick. With millions of listeners a month, Building the Future has quickly become one of the fastest rising programs, with a focus on interviewing startups, entrepreneurs, investors, CEOs, and more. The radio and TV show airs in 15 markets across the globe, including Silicon Valley. For full showtimes, past episodes, or to sponsor the show, please visit buildingthefutureshow.com.
Welcome back to the show. Today we have Greg Cross. He's the co-founder and chief business officer at Soul Machines. Greg, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Kevin. Great to be here. Glad you want to talk to me. So,
yeah, I'm excited to have you on the show. I think what you guys are doing at Soul Machines is really innovative and cool. But maybe before we get into that, let's get to know you a little bit better and start off with where you grew up.
sure. So, you might be able to tell from my accent. I'm a New Zealander or a Kiwi, as we refer to ourselves. So I'm calling in to you today from the future. So it's it's early morning tomorrow. I'm living in early morning tomorrow for you. So that's kind of me. I was born and raised here in New Zealand. I did a lot of my early growing up in the countryside, on a dairy farm, on and around dairy farms, milking cows, and so to start with. So that's kind of idyllic childhood in many respects, growing up in the countryside of New Zealand, and then off to boarding school at high school. So spent 5 years at high school, at a boarding school in Auckland, New Zealand's biggest city. From there, tried university, didn't like it, dropped out, and really.
Why did you drop out of curiosity?
I just didn't like it. Just didn't enjoy it. It just wasn't my scene for some reason. We're going back a long way in history here now. So it was I didn't like, at the time, I guess the socialism, the liberalism, some of that stuff that surrounded universities was really quite foreign to me. I had a skiing accident and never went back. So it's kind of the much to gotcha. My mum and dad never forgave me, but that's okay. That's a different story. I then got really lucky. It's kind of funny. You always meet interesting people at different points in your life and career. And I started an internship with one of New Zealand's leading technology entrepreneurs. It was a high-tech manufacturing and engineering company in the plastics industry. Bill Foreman. He's no longer with us, unfortunately, but Bill really took me under his wing as almost as a son, and he got me incredibly interested in building businesses and competing on the international stage. So, and he also got me hooked on being an entrepreneur. Bill was a great person to learn off. So he got me into tech. So I ended up, after a couple of years as an intern, I ended up taking over responsibility for building a lot of their internal IT systems that we used to run our high-tech plastics manufacturing facilities. Built the company was called Trigon. It went on to become a global business. They reinvented the courier pack industry and the material that courier packs are made out of. Much after I left, because we ended up spinning out a company out of that together, called Fact International. This was back in the late 80s. As a result of spinning that company out, I ended up living in the US. So I moved to Boston and had my first stint living in the US with this company. And a few years later, after those 5 years building that company in Boston, we sold it to a Canadian company. I moved across the border to Toronto. So, yeah, that's kind of, I mean, Bill, really, really kickstarted my career, and he, someone I always credit for me for the, some of the key things in life that have made, really make me tick. Really that drive to want to compete internationally. And be the best at what we do on the international stage, and he really set me up for a very entrepreneurial adventure, if you like, in my career story. So yeah, that's kind of where that's kind of where it all started for me. So I'm been back living in New Zealand now for just under 20 years. So while I choose to live here, pre-pandemic, I'd spend most of my time, on an airplane. So, because I'm still building businesses. I'm still competing. Enjoying competing on the international stage. So, I got two grown-up kids who I'm incredibly proud of. Living in the US. My eldest son is in the US military as a special forces guy. My youngest part-time musician, part-time IT guy. So so incredibly proud of my kids, and obviously sort of my career interest since I moved back to New Zealand in the early 2000s, post just after the .com era. Nuclear winter in Silicon Valley back in those days. So, came back to, came home to New Zealand. My wife needed some surgery, and so we kind of stayed. And I got interested at that point in commercializing deep science tech. I'd largely been a software guy up to then. Enterprise software guy, building businesses in the enterprise software space. I got interested in deep tech, so I built a relationship with the University of Auckland. So, New Zealand's leading research university, my local university. I started helping them build out, a lot of entrepreneurial ecosystems started to evolve in those early 2000 era. So just as they did in the US and Silicon Valley and other parts, a lot of the incubator industry, the angel industry all flourished during those. So I was part of the evolution of that here. And through the relationships I built at the University of Auckland, I went on to spin out, with a co-founder, young co-founder, a company we ended up calling Power by Proxy. So Power by Proxy was built on the world's leading portfolio research patent portfolio in the wireless charging space. So
interesting.
A professor at the University of Auckland, Dr. John Boyes, had probably spent his whole life researching wireless charging and carrying on the work of Nikola Tesla. So my co-founder and I, convinced the University of Auckland to provide us with a license for that technology. We grew that business, over the next, so this was, we started talking about this in sort of the 2005, 2006 timeframe. We founded the company in 2007, and over the next, I guess it was a 10-year journey. We went through a number of really interesting applications for wireless charging in both the industrial and consumer space. We became embedded in that. There was a big standards battle for wireless charging between Wireless Power Consortium, which was a cooperative group of industry players on one side, and Qualcomm and Intel with a different standard on the other side. We were one of the key contributors of technology to the Wireless Power Consortium. We won investment from people like Samsung and big industrial components guys, TE Connectivity.
Very cool.
But ultimately, in this particular case, we ended up selling the business to Apple. So in 2017, in 2017. So if you're a user of an iPhone, you carry a bit of Kiwi originated technology around in your pocket. So
that's very cool, actually.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of cool to think about that. Something that you're associated with and were a part of. Your life's journey is there's millions and millions of devices around the world these days. So it's kind of cool. So I'd left the company before the sale. The sale was, these sorts of deals take a while, and it was my co-founder there that got that particular deal across the line. I'd moved on, and so that as the deal with Apple was done in 2017, I had actually co-founded Soul Machines in 2016. So that's kind of another that was kind of incredibly exciting chapter. Apple's wireless charging R&D division is still based here in Auckland. My old engineering team, my co-founder of Power by Proxy are all still working on that team. So that was clearly a highlight in my career. I did, I guess I jumped over it, but I did a couple of really interesting stints in the corporate world, which is, and you could say is a little bit interesting for an entrepreneur. But the first was in the launch of digital cellular technology in New Zealand. Before digital cell phones, we had analog cell phones, so completely different infrastructure. And so you go back to Motorola was the big player in the analog cell phone industry. Motorola and the flip phones, and you had the digital, the digital, or in Europe they call it GSM. That got rolled out in the early 90s. I was 2IC in the rollout and the build out of the GSM network. And I mean, literally, in those days, these were literally billion-dollar startups, moving into an industry where there were large monopoly providers already in place, or one or two duopolies, and you're building a completely new cell phone infrastructure, a completely new network with brand new technology. So it was even in a relatively small market like New Zealand, that this was literally $1 billion startup. That was, interestingly, actually, the key funder of that startup in New Zealand was Bell South, one of the old baby Bells from the US. So they had quite the international footprint back in those days. So I spent a couple of years, at the beginning of that sort of mobile digital era, and that was really interesting learnings for me, because it's the first time from a tech point of view I really touched a consumer oriented business. So where you're selling selling cell phones. It's crazy to think about it, Kevin. Back in those days, even text messaging was not even really considered a revenue stream in those days. So quite an incredible era really. And from there, I probably should have learned my lesson by then, but I got talked into doing a second stint in corporate with Microsoft. And so I ran the local subsidiary in New Zealand for a couple of years.
Cool.
And what was really, really cool in those days is, this was the first time the software industry really did a consumer launch. This was the era of Windows 95. So, the first television ads for software came out that year. The rock and roll industry. Microsoft hired the Rolling Stones would start me up as for the launch of that product. So it was it was another really, really, if you like, pivotal point in many respects in the tech industry. It was an era where the whole browser wars happened, and seeing how nimble Bill Gates was, to rise, rise to that competitive threat of Netscape, and respond to that, and actually realize that Microsoft had gone down the completely wrong route, with the internet, and pivot what was still a multi-billion-dollar company, pivot that literally overnight, and its whole internet strategy overnight was once again also an incredible learning exercise. So hopefully that's given you a bit of color into who I am. Soul Machine's journey started in January of 2016, when a good friend of mine introduced me to my now co-founder of Soul Machines, Dr. Mark Sager. I guess really, pretty typical story, but a very Kiwi story. We, a friend of ours based in LA introduced us. We went literally and had a beer. We spent 2 or 3 hours, just getting to know each other and talking, and literally at that point, from that point on, we started working towards spinning Soul Machines out of the University of Auckland again. So Mark is, Mark, my co-founder and business partner at Soul Machines, is an Oscar winner technology animator. Worked on movies, like Avatar and King Kong with
cool.
Sir Peter Jackson and James Cameron. So, one of the reasons. So, if you look at the genesis of what we do as a company, remember those giant blue creatures and how we fell in love with them, even though they're incredibly unusual. Mark's tech. Obviously, a lot of incredibly talented people had a lot to do with that, but so did Mark's tech, because. And this really goes to the genesis of what we're about at Soul Machines. Is most of us fell in love with those giant blue creatures, and the reason we did that was, even though they didn't look that much like us, they actually had this ability to express human-like emotion in a very, very human-like way.
Sure.
And that was, ultimately, brilliant direction, brilliant camera work, but also brilliant facial, leading, world-leading facial animation technology by Mark. So that was sort of, that's where Mark came from. When I met him, in 2016, he'd left the movie industry in 2012 and set up a research lab at the University of Auckland to really start to explore the future of animation. And Mark had got interested in a couple of really key concepts that sit behind this work that we do. He'd got interested in, because if you think of the movie industry and the games industry, all of that incredible animation is being driven by motion capture. And motion capture means you have a real human actor performing the role. You've got a bunch of high-tech cameras and special equipment, which is capturing the data from the acting that the actor performs in the role. That data is collected and then played back on top of a CGI or a CGI character, an avatar or a digital person. So, movies and the games industry is about this combination of incredible CGI and motion capture, pre-recorded animation. So and of course both the creation of the characters and the motion capture animation are eye-wateringly expensive. A single minute of animation for a single character in a big budget movie can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, literally. So
sure.
So Mark had got interested in how we might be able to autonomously animate CGI characters. So that was kind of, how can we use artificial intelligence, to autonomously animate CGI characters? So that's kind of where his research program started. And by autonomous animation, we are autonomously animated. We're having this conversation, at this point in time, it's a unique conversation. It's a personal conversation, and this whole conversation has been driven by the interaction. Ultimately, Kevin, my brain and your brain. Your
Sure.
brain is choosing the questions and the words that you're wanting to make up the questions. My brain is, figuring out how to respond to those questions and tell you my story. The emotional content, the words, the context, all of that is being animated for me by my brain. So, so Mark's research started off, looking at, with a concept of, called, how do I create literally, how do I create a digital brain? How do I create a digital brain that operates, and can animate a digital character, a CGI character, in the same way that humans are animated. So that was kind of where his research started in 2012. He got really, really interested in embodied cognition as a discipline, which is basically comes down to modeling different aspects of brain function. So he bought, in a small research university like the University of Auckland, it's really easy to pull together a multidisciplinary research team of neuroscientists, child psychologists, into a small team, and so Mark said about a project called Baby X, because a lot of the neural pathways that we have in our brain, as we most of us will know, are formed at a very, very young age. So Mark wanted to explore, the development of the human brain function at a young age. Mark created Baby X as the basis of his research project. Baby X is actually, based on, the two-year-old likeness of his own daughter.
Interesting.
So he literally, to create a CGI character, a human-like CGI character that involves scanning the person. It involves a whole bunch of CGI artists building the CGI, and then literally, Mark, started a whole bunch of work modeling different aspects of the human brain. So, give you some idea of the approach to it. And there's let's be clear, there's a lot that even the leading neuroscientists in the world don't understand about how the human brain works. So, Mark, decided to choose different models, or different research papers that he could then model into software. So in this patented digital brain that we use to animate our digital characters today, if you think about it, one theory of neuroscience is there are actually three control systems within our brain. We have our brain stem, which largely controls our life function, how we breathe, whether we breathe slowly and deeply or fast and shallow. Obviously that has an impact on the way in which, our body moves and the way in which our facial muscles move. If we're, it controls our fight or flight response systems. So that's our brainstem. It's our reptilian brain, some people call it. Then we have our limbic system, and our limbic system is effectively our emotional response system. So if we were sitting face to face and I smiled at you, your brain's natural reaction to seeing a smile is to secrete dopamine and serotonin and smile back. That's the natural reaction of that's a natural human reaction to a smile. And so modeling, and creating certainly, virtualized versions of those neurotransmitters, those brain chemicals that generate emotional behaviors and responses, is another piece of our technology. And of course, then the final part is our rational brain, our cortex. And our rational brain is, you decide you don't want to smile at me, when you see me smile at you, that's you making a different decision for your brain, your rational brain taking over. So I mean, hopefully this is gives some simple context for the autonomous animation work that the work that Mark started back in 2012. We met at the beginning of 2016, and we spun Soul Machines out of the university in July, when we closed our Series A funding round, led by Horizons Ventures out of Hong Kong. Selena Chow, who is this incredible investor in emerging technologies. And technologies that have the potential to be big platforms and have a big impact on the world. So that's kind of where Soul Machine started. Where in July of this year, of course, we'll be 5 years old, we've grown enormously, from the Mark and 11 researchers, who joined Soul Machines on day one, plus me. That was the starting team, where over 200 people.
Wow.
Our corp today, we've raised $65 million of venture funding in 2 rounds. We're just out for our third round at the moment. Our core R&D remains in Auckland, but we have researchers and developers, subject matter experts in different parts of our technology, scattered around the world. We have, we're getting close to 100 people in the US, which is our key market. So,
Wow.
Even though, I guess I'm grounded in, and I really do mean grounded in New Zealand, in this COVID era at this point in time, my executive leadership team, for this business is based in the US, very much Bay Area based. Our
Sure.
chief marketing officers in San Francisco, my head of global sales is in San Jose, my head of customer success is in the Bay Area, my head of digital is in New York. So, I mean, we're very, very much a US centric business, even though the roots of the company and a lot of our R&D is here. So we don't even really sell our technology in the New Zealand market. It's a very, as you'd expect, it's a very, very small market. So for us to compete for and be successful in winning the sort of capital that we need to do the type of research that we do, that really does require us to really think about how we compete and win as a Silicon Valley company, even though the origins of the company are on the other side of the world. So that's kind of the way the way we think. 2019 pre-pandemic, I literally spent my life living on a plane. I was averaging a long haul trip a week.
Wow.
And one of the obviously one of the best things about New Zealand is it's so far away from anywhere. So it's obviously been a benefit to us as a country during COVID. And
you guys handled it incredibly well.
Yeah, so it's been one of the good things. We're a small company on the country on the edge of the world, a long way away from anyone else. So that helps. So that's one of the best things about New Zealand. It's also one of the worst things about New Zealand. It is a long way away. But look, if you want to live an adventurous life, or a life like mine, which we all have that kind of that opportunity now, because the world is a smaller place in many respects. I can run a Silicon Valley business from New Zealand today. I have been doing that for the last 12 months, signing multi-million-dollar contracts, hiring key executives, attending, generally via some sort of video conferencing platform, keynoting and speaking at some of the world's biggest conferences, which are all now digital. So, I guess one of the things that I think about as the way the world's changed. If you remember back to 2019, we we were in 2019, we were spending all this time talking about the fourth industrial revolution, and the robots were coming and they were going to steal all of our jobs and they were going to kill us, and we were going to have to follow Elon Musk's lead and move to Mars, because the robots were going to take over planet Earth from us. So that was front and center in all of our conversations. And the really interesting thing, and I was reflecting on this the other day, is the pandemic arrived, and we had, quite rightly so, we had different priorities. We went down a couple of levels in Maslow's law, and Maslow's hierarchy, and started thinking about the health and safety and how we protect our families and our communities. Our world got reshaped and redefined in some ways which we, to be honest, we really don't understand yet. I think it will be potentially another 10 years before we really understand the impact of this era that started at the beginning of the 2020s. I think we'll look back and in 10 years time, we'll get to 2031 and we'll look back and say, wow, we thought we had it figured out, when we rolled out vaccines in 2021, and maybe we do, maybe we don't, Kevin. But the interesting thing here was, we stopped talking about the fourth industrial revolution, but it actually happened while we were worrying and focused elsewhere. It actually, totally. If we think about it, the world became digital overnight, and whole industries, the economic base of those industries shifted. The way in which industries could deliver products and services shifted. E-commerce rates, which had been growing steadily over, since the early 2000s, but pretty steadily on a pretty linear growth curve. They literally, doubled in a few months, because it's the only way we could shop was to buy stuff online. Video conferencing platforms, businesses like Zoom, became part of our day-to-day lexicon. Should we do a Zoom call today? Let's set up a Zoom call. So we, all of the industries, the tourism industry, the airline industry, got blown up. Healthcare and education, two industries that, or two sectors that have really, really struggled to think about, how do we shift into the world of digital education and digital healthcare. They found themselves, cast into those worlds literally overnight. All of a sudden, doctors all over the world discovered they could do patient consultations via video conferencing, and they could do it incredibly efficiently. So we knew going into, we've known for decades that we don't train enough teachers in our society. We don't train enough doctors in our communities anymore. We just don't. If you live in a big city, there tends to be a concentration of good schools and good medical care. But if you get out into the rural communities in America or Australia or New Zealand, where I grew up, there aren't the specialist teachers in our high schools, and we don't have enough GPs to look after people's, communities' health needs. So, so all of a sudden, COVID, helped us understand how we could start the process of thinking about reframing the delivery of scarce resources to more people, more often. So, for us, like all tech companies, the first 3 to 6 months were, we can't sell because everybody's, it's not appropriate for us to be selling our software. During those first couple of quarters, in the pandemic era, all we could do is, we could call our existing customers. We spent a lot of time talking to government agencies. How can we help? Interesting. One of the, that became our catchphrase. How can we help? the cool thing about digital people is they're infinitely scalable.
Sure.
That they're available. I can run, because we serve our digital people from the cloud. We can have 1,000 digital people sessions, or 100,000 digital people sessions running at a time, or 1,000,000 digital people sessions. So digital people are infinitely scalable. They work 24/7. Because it's a video stream from the cloud, they're available from any device, anywhere. All of the content is in one place. So, all of the content that drives and the knowledge that drives an interaction with a digital person exists in a single place, a natural language processing engine from any one of, the big companies that build NLP engines. All of that knowledge exists in a single repository. So you update the knowledge in one place, and it's instantly available to everybody everywhere. So digital people, we started talking to help desks at that point in time. If you think of the call center industry, many call centers just got wiped out by the pandemic, because they had to figure out how to how to get the tech working from the cloud and people working from anywhere. A lot of call center workers come from developing nations, where COVID meant that that they just got sick, and they couldn't turn up for work. So so we started having these conversations as 2020 carried on, about the impact that we could have. We did some amazing work. One of the organizations we went and said, how can we help, was the World Health Organization. And
Interesting.
and as a result of those conversations, we started those conversations in March of 2020. By July of 2020, we actually launched Florence, a digital health worker for the World Health Organization. We provided Florence, we provided our technology for free to the World Health Organization.
Cool.
We convinced Amazon and Google to contribute to the partnership. And Florence's role, Florence had two roles, and continues to this date. Florence can answer people's questions, about myths and fake news on COVID-19. If I drink bleach, does that really, stop me getting, these were, it sounds crazy, but these were things that, people believed at different times.
Yep.
So Florence became part of the war against fake news and COVID-19, and then she also then became part of the one of the biggest initiatives the World Health Organization has is smoking, because smoking is one of the biggest health problems in the world. So Florence became part of their smoking cessation program, because obviously, smoking and COVID-19, weren't are not a good combination for anybody. So Florence today continues on. She now speaks all 6 languages of the United Nations.
Wow. Very cool.
6 key languages. So digital people help you think about how you can do business in different parts of the world when it's not possible to travel there. I'm jumping around a bit here, Kevin, so I hope that's okay. But
no, it's good. I think maybe, do you want to give a few more use cases of how people have implemented Soul Machines? Because I think how you guys have done it in the different verticals is really innovative, and I think it'll give people a really good idea of how they can potentially use Soul Machines in their companies.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. Let me do that. So we sort of the way we look at the work we do, we kind of break it into 4 market areas or market segments, and they're not necessarily vertical, because we see our technology as a platform technology. I imagine a future, Kevin. We imagine a future, Kevin, where in maybe the 3 to 5 year time frame, you can make a digital replica of yourself literally in minutes.
Sure.
Yep. You can train it by interacting with it. It learns your voice, your personality, your behavioral characteristics. You'll be able to attach a knowledge base to your digital twin, and your digital twin can then go out into the metaverse and interview people. So I don't know, you can go work on your golf game, or learn a new musical instrument. Two things I'm doing now. I'm grounded at the moment. So that's so we're very much a platform company. But the way in which we've explored developing the market, we really look at the market as in four categories. So the first of those is what we call the future of customer experience. So ultimately, what's our vision of the company is we want to democratize the personal experience. As humans, we are wired to have face-to-face interaction with other human beings. That's the most natural of human communication states. So so we're wanting to use digital people and the way in which AI technology is rapidly developing to democratize that personal experience. And so when we talk about the future of customer experience, we're talking about democratizing brand experiences, personalizing brand experiences. So, great examples, two great examples of use cases here are the work we've done with a Procter & Gamble brand, SK2. Yumi is a digital skincare consultant for their SK2,
very cool
skincare brand. Yumi lives in their US online store, and
interesting.
And so when you go to the SK2 store in the US, you can choose to ask, have a face-to-face interaction with a digital skincare consultant. We started building Yumi back in 2019, pre-pandemic, because SK2 had noticed this phenomena as in that the next generation of clients, the 20-something, the 30-something-year-old women that they were trying to attract to the brand, they didn't want to go into a retail store and talk to a real skincare consultant face to face. They wanted more privacy and more when they had discussions around their skin, their skin care and their skin conditions and what skin products. So they wanted more of a personal experience. So that's so we started working with SK2 pre-pandemic. They rolled out Yumi in February, March of 2020, and she's had a dramatic impact on the revenue that they're generating online.
Very cool.
And because you can create, even in this digital shopping world, you can create that personal one-to-one shopping experience with a digital person with Yumi. Yumi speaks English. In the American market, she speaks Japanese. In Japan, and later this year, she'll speak Mandarin in China.
Very cool.
So,
very cool.
That's one use case. Another one we touched on at the beginning of this session was the amazing project we launched a couple of months back with Nestle, Ruth, the digital cookie coach. Nestle is one of the biggest food ingredient companies in the world. I mean, they're a truly global company headquartered out of Europe, out of Switzerland, and and if you think about Nestle, I mean, they're, we go to the supermarket and their products, under different brand categories are everywhere. Many different brands for many different categories: cooking ingredients, baking ingredients. So we worked with Ruth. We worked with their baking division, specifically their Toll House brand.
Interesting.
And what they were really interested in exploring is this future of a personal brand experience. And really, really big brands, really big organizations, it's really hard to create that personal experience. The closest they can get to creating a personal brand experience is really, really targeted digital advertising, digital media, using the internet as a platform. And this, Ruth, the digital cookie coach, really enabled them to go to another level for the first time, because anybody, anywhere, at any time can go talk to Ruth and learn how to bake chocolate chippy cookies with the ingredients they have in their pantry. So and this is an experience you can do to impress your wife or your girlfriend, or it's a family experience. You can have Ruth become part of a baking experience with your kids, with your children. So this is it's a really, really unique, and this personal brand experiences, we're changing the economics of these personal brand experiences, because it literally is just a video stream, being an interactive video stream, coming from the cloud. So this is the in one context, this is the future of advertising. It's not about one to many digital advertising anymore. It's one to one, and as AI gets smarter and smarter, which it literally does from every single interaction, and we integrate new technologies, and the regulatory framework evolves around AI. Ruth in the future could say, hey, Kevin, great to see you back. What type of cookies are we baking today? I remember last week when we baked cookies, it was, your favorite almond crunch cookies. Do you want to do them again, or do you want to, experiment and do something? So we can, the experiences will get, over time will become more and more personalized. And if and sort of real world analogy of that is when you walk into your, I don't know, your favorite local delicatessen, where because you go there every day for lunch, the staff there, the people know you, they know what sandwich you like, what condiments you like, so those personal experience today exists at a very, very local, small scale level. And so imagine being able to do that for the biggest brands in the world. So that's kind of a dimension of what we do. So that's what we call that future of customer experience. E-commerce, brand influencing, call centers, help desk, customer service, are all part of that, personalizing that experience, changing the economics of that experience. The next category is what we call the future of work. And this has really sharply come into focus, during the COVID-19 era. We got a lot of our big brand clients, particularly in the banking industry, where we're working with some of the biggest banks in the world. They all of a sudden had hundreds of thousands of people working from anywhere, working from home. And this is an incredibly complex industry from a regulatory point of view, from a, even just managing health and safety. And, when you've got 300,000 people working from home in different neighborhoods and communities all over the US. So how do you keep them up to date? How do you keep them, how do you help, educate them and help them learn and develop new skills and new capabilities to deliver products and services when everybody's working from anywhere? So we did a lot of work and building out use cases, and you'd call them HR use cases, learning, we call them development and capability building use cases. So all of a sudden our technology started to be used for how do you onboard employees that work from anywhere? How do we teach them new skills? How do we teach them new employees how to represent the brand experiences? We're rolling out new electric vehicle ranges, and we can't get everybody together in a conference center to tell them about all of the specifications of our new electric vehicle. How can we do that digitally? So these are areas where we've done a lot of really cool exploration with clients over the last 12 months. But then you start getting into what does the future of work look like in terms of how do we allocate and think about allocating work to digital people so that we can take real people and move them into higher value and higher productivity and more rewarding work. So how do we think about the evolution of that? You get to think about, we did some work, if you take the airline industry, completely blown up by COVID. So they're going to have to reinvent the economics of their whole industry. So, this really gets, some of the industry sectors that were most impacted, really thinking about the way in which they're going to construct their competitive strategy, how they're going to have to rebuild their companies for long-term competitive advantage. So some of that work, literally is just getting underway at the moment. But we do know that the fourth industrial revolution was always going to have that impact on industry. We've just seen some of that happen earlier with the pandemic. Just keeping moving fairly quickly here. We move into healthcare and education. Once again, we've already touched on that. We've done a lot of work with health service providers and education providers. One of the cool things about digital people, and this goes across all industry sectors, is people actually, in many instances, prefer to speak to digital people rather than real people, because often people fear human judgment. It's incredible how often, we found in our banking industry clients, we like to talk to digital bankers because we fear rejection when we talk to a mortgage broker or a loan advisor. We don't like talking to people about our money problems, and how we manage our money. I mean, they're just uncomfortable experiences for us. In healthcare, applications like mental health or even STIs. We've done some work with a health services company in this area. We just don't like to talk to people about these things. So digital people perform this really important role of non-judgmental interaction. We create digital teachers, a digital language teacher. Most of us did high school languages, and most of us don't speak those high school languages anymore. For the very simple reason that many of us don't process new language syntax particularly well, and we fear judgment of the teacher and our classmates, so we stop asking questions. People learn at different speeds. So here's another example of areas where a digital teacher doesn't really care if you ask the same question 20 times or you do the same lesson 10 times. So sure. These are aspects, and then the last category, which of our work, is the entertainment sector, where we've built digital twins of some of our celebrities and or heroes. Will I Am, which was a project we did in 2019. We've just announced a project with Carmelo Anthony, the NBA All-Star, and cool. And starting to frame, Carmelo thinks very, deeply about, opportunities for him to be a digital brand, opportunities for him to reach more people digitally. Imagine, a digital Carmelo being able to talk to his fans in China in Mandarin, because very cool. Even though real Carmelo doesn't speak Mandarin, his digital twin can. So, these are some of the amazing things that we literally get to imagine on a day-to-day basis. You kind of get the sense, hopefully, and your listeners will get the sense that I'm having a tremendous amount of fun with this business.
No, that's really great. No, I like and very cool, but we are out of time. So how about we close with mentioning where people can get more information about Soul Machines and any other links you want to mention?
Sure. I mean, obviously, you can find out a lot about us, at our website, our YouTube channel, soulmachines.com. You can see a lot of, on our YouTube channel, you can see a lot of use cases of our, of our work with some of the biggest brands in the world. You can see videos of that. You go Google Ruth, Nestle or Toll House, and Ruth, the cookie coach, and you can go talk to your first digital person. You can have your first digital person experience. Same with Florence. If you go to our website, we actually have our own digital employee. We call her name is Sam. Sam is as you'd expect. In Soul Machines, we call our employees soulmates. So. Sam is our digital soulmate, so you can go talk to Sam from there. So go have your first digital person experience.
Very cool. Well, Greg, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be on the show, and I look forward to keeping in touch with you, and have a good rest of your day.
Thanks, Kevin. Really appreciate you having me.
Thank you. Okay, bye.
Thanks for listening. Please visit our website at buildingthefutureshow.com to join the free community, sign up for our newsletter, or to sponsor the show. The music is done by Electric Mantra. You can check him out at electricmantra.com and keep building the future.